The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Hope you're all well, and I'm happy that you decided to join us this morning for what I think is a extremely powerful strategy or system to monitor cash flow in your practice. And as usual, when we complete these, we like to give always people an opportunity to fill out a form so we can talk with them. But I want to remind you that we are profitability management experts using proven strategies to guide you to create a practice in life that's emotionally satisfying, spiritually fulfilling, and financially abundant. So when I complete this cash flow webinar, I'll offer you an invitation to complete a profit potential profile. Your positive response will indicate your desire to gain control over money and begin a positive, creative approach to money in your practice and life. Keep this in mind. Simplicity is the root of all genius. Any intelligent fool can make things bigger, more complex, and more violent. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. So my goal today is to outline a simple, proven, predictable system to control money in your life and practice. It's about taking something that's very confusing and complex and making it elegantly useful, simple, and powerful. Without a cash flow system, money controls you. With this cash flow system, you control money. A couple quick statistics to remind you that the average 55-year-old dentist, according to ADA statistics, has saved or has a net worth of $250,000 or has increased their net worth by the rate of 8,316 per year, according to the ADA journal. At this rate, an average dentist would have to work another 210 more years to achieve a net worth of $2 million. So why do we put money first? If we think about this, it shows the absolute lack of fiscal and financial control on the part of dentists, and I'm sure it's true for a lot of other people that own their own small businesses, and yet we're primarily talking about dentists. 6% retired with less than $50,000, 24% with less than $200,000 net worth, 35% with less than $500,000, 15% with $500,000 to $900,000, 4% retired with $1 to $3 million, and a grand total of only 1% retired with greater than $3 million net worth. And this speaks to the importance of the information that I'm presenting to you today. So the stories we hear every day are, it can't happen to me. 61-year-old dentist is grossing $1 million a year with no significant money or goals. Another dentist says, I've been busy all my life, I'm broke, no retirement money, still in debt, not much time left. So what we always say, what I like to say is there is another way. And the other way is a model of business or practice development that we call profitability management. And all I'm going to do today is introduce you to one core system of that process. So the three cardinal principles, there are 8 rules, habits, or laws, and of course in the cash flow system. So you can make the same mistake for 10 years and call it experience. So first you got to learn to earn it. Second, you got to learn to keep it, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And third is you have to learn where to invest it so it grows and you don't lose it. So the first habit is learn to create value. The only and everlasting source of profit is the creation of value. I could do a webinar just on that. Save 10% of what you earn. For every $10 you put in your purse, take out and use but 9. Your purse will start to fatten at once, and it will bring increasing weight and feel good in your hand and bring satisfaction to your soul. And when I first read that, and it was given to me by my attorney, Elliot Simon, I determined that this was the beginning of the model that you're going to be seeing today. And the 10% is 10% of gross revenues if you're in business. The third habit or law is control your expenses. And this is what Klassen said. Now, I'll tell you the truth about men and women. Whenever your income grows, your expenses will as well, unless you protest to the contrary. Spend what you will, but always save 10%. And the fourth law or habit is make all your investments profitable. Each and every dollar spent must be thought with some return, whether you're spending the dollars in your practice, in your business, or you're spending your dollars in investing. To simply spend money with no thought or consequences nor demand of return is to act as a fool, to cause destruction or ruin. And obviously, you've got to protect your money from loss. Before you entrust your money as an investment, be sure you acquaint yourself with the dangers that may become of it. And there's another sub-rule that goes here. Never invest more than 10% of your money in any one deal, no matter how good the deal seems. And the sixth habit or law that about accumulation of money is to use compound interest. Wherever your money can compound is where you want to put it. And the seventh is to ensure future income. And that's really what we're doing. Each and every man and woman should create a plan for certain investments that will endure safely for years so that they'll be available to you when you no longer want to work. And lastly, exactly what we're doing here today at the center with a group of marvelous dentists, we're working to increase our ability to earn. So here's the deal. If you break these laws, you get in trouble, and not knowing these laws doesn't get you off the hook. So this is why one of the major reasons why the cash flow system is so important. It's really pretty dreadful when you think that 95% of all dentists, in spite of taking in $30+ million in their lifetime, by the time they reach the age of 65, really can't afford to retire. So why do we have a cash flow system? Okay. Well, financial independence and budgeting, that is percentage budgeting, go hand in hand, because you don't get financial independence without it. The cash flow system is the single most important strategy you'll ever do in your life regarding money, period. It puts you in control of money. It's simple. You can understand it. It gives you peace of mind. It gives you the information that you need in a form that you can make really good decisions. And years ago when I lectured with Dick Fabian, he became a client of mine, and he had a little $13 million a year business, family business, and in 6 months, his net profit in his business increased $1.5 million. And that's why he said, when he introduced me in Dallas years ago, he said, this is the single most significant financial strategy ever created. So if profit is not an economic motive, then all that will happen is you'll end up chasing your expenses. So the biggest single reason for me to have a cash flow system, that is for me personally, is that so the money or the lack of control won't determine my treatment plans for my patients. In other words, my need for money should not be the predominant reason for me developing a treatment plan. I'm convinced more than ever, after working with dentists for more than 35 years, that the single greatest fear that holds dentists back is the fear of lost money. But listen to this. This kind of blows my mind. If we look at an average database, and our present-day students go from $600,000 a year to $3.5–4 million a year. And they all have the same problem, a lack of understanding of where the money's going. If the average database is 70%, that means the costs of running the business are $560,000. If the overhead was 50%, not 70%, the cost would be $400,000. So this dentist, this prototypical dentist, this average dentist, is throwing away $160,000 a year, $13,330 a month, $784 a day, and $98 an hour. That's $4,800,000 of potential profit that is lost in a 30-year practice lifetime from the age of 30 to 60. That is absolutely mind-blowing. Each 1% of excess overhead in an $800,000 a year practice equals $660, 666 a month. And if you make 10% of that money for 25 years, that's $891,000. So the question begs to be asked, is overhead important? The average gain with the profitability management method is $6,000 a month invested at 11 years is $1 million. $6,000 for 20 years is $5 million. This is astronomical. $6,000 a month at 11% compounded for 13 years is almost $17 million. And this was the one statement that I heard as a young dentist that really impacted me. When L.D. Pankey said, "You'll never be the dentist you have the potential of becoming until you're financially independent." And I modified that in my own mind and have for many people, and I said, if you act as if, that is, if you have a plan in place and you're acting as if you're saving 10% of your gross revenues every day or every week or every month, you're already on the path to financial independence, and you can act and will behave differently because it won't be long till you have reserves. Jacob Needleman, a marvelous man that I've studied with for years, wrote a book called Money and the Meaning of Life. And what Jacob said, unless you give some of your attention to money, one day you'll give all of your attention to it. And I wrote years ago, money isn't everything, but unless you learn how to understand it, control it, and use it, it will cripple you throughout your life. So poor people spend their money and save what's left. Wealthy people save their money and spend what's left. So a cash flow system puts you in a power state regarding money. Now, I always like to go through this because this is really important, because generally the people start making more money and then they spend it. They get to about 7 or 8 years in practice, they paid off their initial debt, then they go and expand it and buy a house. And so they keep themselves in a constant state of disabling. They get enabling and they go to disabling. They make some money, they lose some money, because they really don't understand how money works in their life and how powerful money can be and how it can really cripple us or really can enable us when we get above this line. So my goal with the cash flow system and the financial strategies is to get you above this line and stay above this line and play above this line, because life is far different up here than it is down here. So when we look at the financial independence formula, and the reason we use models and formulas, even though we may change them to suit individual circumstances, they give us a way to understand the world. They give us a way to organize information in a way that we can look at it and interpret it rather than become overwhelmed by it. So the first part, and where most of the money is in your business. And so you can see that the overhead number, 35 to 55%, and this, of course, accommodates for different specialties. This is all the way up to a prosthodontist who's having lots of lab fees incorporated in his or her work. The second area, of course, is personal expenses, personal living expenses. Now, if you happen to have a dental practice where your overhead is 60% and your formula for yourself or associates is 40%, good luck. Because you're going to be in survival your entire life. And I don't care if you're taking in $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million. I don't care if you're doing $100 million a year. You're still in survival because you're taking everything out of your business and you've got nothing left to save or invest. So you really, this particular, and this is where a lot of dentists are. And by the way, a lot of people in small business are like this. They really don't have good control over the finance, and they really don't make good decisions either in their business or personal, and so they really don't build this account, okay? So when we look at this, it's a matter of these 4 things. First of all, you have to have enough income. But if you don't manage the expenses, then what difference does it make? And then if you don't understand debt, if you don't understand how to control debt and what debt is, then you're not going to have any money left over here to save or invest. And so years ago when I started talking about this, really it's a lot like the strategy that Warren Buffett uses to invest in businesses. He wants to invest in a business that has a good flow of income, but also, why would you invest in a business that didn't know how to manage its expenses and it spent everything it's made? Or why would you invest in a business? Why would you invest in a business that had no control over debt or minimum control over debt and was literally, drowning in debt? Okay? So anytime a business is more than 50% in debt, we never invest in that business because too much of the potential profit is going to debt. Okay? So when we look at the cash flow system, the heart of the system is percentage budgeting. The absolute heart of it, it's where everything flows from. So what we say in our budget, and this varies according to specialties, it varies according to the type of practice that one has, but we make a general statement. We say, okay, 25 to 30% of what the practice takes in is what the doctor makes as compensation for being the technician in the business. The staff expense is 20 to 21%. Occupancy is 6%. So if you run this number into anything, like let's say this was $1 million, just say, let's say that there's $1 million of revenue coming in this business. This means that the doctor that owns the business is going to make $250,000 to $300,000. This means there's 20% or $200,000 to go to pay staff. It's $60,000 to go to pay occupancy, on and on and on, because each one of these percentages gives you the actual dollar number to determine. So there are 3 fixed expenses: staff compensation, occupancy, and human development costs. Human development and equipment costs. This is the money that you use to develop yourself, develop your team, and this is also the same money that you use to buy equipment. The variable expenses are professional supplies, marketing, lab fees, and of course that's going to vary, and administration expense. So you have 32% is fixed and 20% is variable. Now we talk about the red, blue, and green lines. So the red line is made up of the total overhead plus doctor's compensation. If your overhead, like I said before, was 60% and the doctor's compensation is 40%, this is a business that's going to be in survival. And the dentist is going to suffer emotionally from this no matter what level of income the practice makes. The blue line then is the red line plus 10%. In other words, the blue line is composed of total overhead plus doctor's salary plus solvency. And I'm going to talk about solvency in a minute. This line is considered the point of solvency. In other words, if you are putting away 10% of cash reserves to protect your business, now you're not going to be living on what comes in week to week or day to day. You're going to have relief. You're going to feel more at peace with money than you did before because you're controlling the flow of it. The green line then is made up of total overhead plus doctor's salary plus solvency and ROI, and I'm going to talk about that. At this point, you've met all the expenses, and the ROI funds are available above and beyond solvency. So I'm going to talk about each one of these in just a moment, but the way it looks is this. Now, in the real world, it doesn't happen in a straight line because you collect less or more every week or month, but each one of these lines goes in concert or in harmony with it. So again, the red line is total overhead plus doctor's compensation. And if you're taking everything out of your business, you're in survival no matter how much money you make. And we add 10% above that to get to the blue line. It doesn't look blue, but it is blue. That 10% is for solvency, and then we suggest 10% above that. So that would be, as you can see, 50, 30, that's 80, 90, 100%. So what's going on here is what we're doing is we're masking savings as an expense. Because if you make this as an option and this as an option, it simply doesn't happen. So what I want to do is I want to share a spreadsheet with you, okay? And here's what it looks like. Here is a prototypical profit controller report where we take everything that's on a profit and loss statement and we put it into one of these 8 categories. And the reason we put it into these categories is to get the mystery out of accounting statements, you know, so you can actually look at it. Now, I want you to pay attention to this because this is really important. So this is so prototypical. The doctor is really ecstatic because producing 800,000, making 240,000, which is for sure more than any of us thought we'd ever make, except notice down here, there's no money, okay? Now, here's an interesting thing. So you're involved with the prototypical consultant, and the consultant says, but you don't understand. If we get you to $1 million, now you're going to have Mecca. Everything is going to be just fine. Watch what happens. The numbers don't lie. You still, okay, you've increased your take-home, which means you've increased your taxes, you've increased your lifestyle, and although Eagle at Dental Economics gave me this title saying that's lifestyle creep, but notice there's still nothing here. So you can keep this game going. Well, let's just do it once. Just to show you how insane this gets, okay? This is how people become idiots, all right? So now we got a dentist that really thinks he's neat and cool because he's grossing $3 million. Oops, it doesn't calculate that. Won't go that high. That's funny. I put too many zeros? No, you didn't have enough. Is that okay? There you go. That's going to work? We'll see. Okay. So now we have a prototypical dentist. He's got 2 homes. He's got a Mercedes. You know, got this, got the other hand. But you notice he's still broke. Do you see what I mean? Everything is consumed by the practice and the lifestyle. This story keeps going on. And what I see is it makes absolute, complete idiots out of the people that are in this model. They're angry, they're upset, they wonder why they're working so hard and they aren't making any money, and for sure they're not doing quality care because they can't. Now let's just modify this a little bit. Let's just play with this a little bit and say, okay, that is a pretty high, so let's just put that at 24, okay? And if let's put this at 5 because that's possible. Let's put this at 5, okay? Let's put this at 4 where it belongs. And let's just see the difference. Okay, now we've got the same $1 million coming in, only there's a slight difference here. We haven't and never do alter the doctor's, because we're not going to alter the doctor's lifestyle because that's something you've already got. But now there's 100,000. Is that all that's possible? I don't think so. I think there's possibly more, and the sharper you get, you pay, and this is actually what happens. Usually in the first year you work with this, your overhead goes down about 10%. You keep working with it, the overhead goes down and down to a certain amount. And I'm going to talk to you today, and I'm going to about a dentist who came here at 70%, and he's now at 47%. He went from 70 to 47%. Do you see the difference here? This is a dentist now that is truly on the path to financial freedom. So I wanted to show you that really everybody's budget is going to be a little different. Different specialties are different, you know, different mix of services that dentists have account for differences in the expenses. And different styles of practice also account for that. So as we look at this, I just wanted you to realize that I think, in fact, I know the percentage budget is like the keys to the kingdom, because what it does over a period of time, there's a number of things we can do with it. Once we know what our exact costs are, plus the doctor's compensation plus profit, we can divide that into the total number of hours. And we can take the fixed and variable cost and divide it by the hours worked, and this gives us a cost per hour. Why? That's the first critical piece. The second thing we can do with it, it can give us a cost per procedure. So take any procedure's time, multiply the units of time, whether you're using a 15-minute unit or a 20-unit, get the cost per unit, and you can calculate what the individual fee for that service is. Look at a case fee. Well, now we can take a larger case, those of you that are doing larger cases, we're able to estimate the total amount of time to complete the case, add the lab fees plus the profit, and this is total case. So it's the cost, which includes the and it includes the cost per hour, plus the lab fee plus the profit equals case fee. We can do another thing with it, which we often do. And I did this in my practice, my group practice when I was in Dubuque, because I had 3 dental technicians doing my work and 1 assistant assisting them. So there were 4 people that were solely producing the restorative dentistry that I was doing. And my partners wanted to know, how much does it cost per unit? So it's easy for us to isolate a hygiene department, an x-ray department, a lab, and now we're able to we could do it the simplest way, take the percentage of revenues that particular area is bringing in and divide the costs individually. Like if this department is producing 33%, hygiene department, we'd be able to take 33% of every one of the costs, occupancy, team, et cetera, and allocate it to that. So now we're able to create what we call a profitability management control report for that department, okay? Or you can get even closer if you want, and you can, everything that's ordered that had to do with hygiene would go with that. You can allocate it even closer if you want. But this gives us an idea of what the expenses are for that individual department, and it all starts with percentage budgeting. An in-house lab, an x-ray department, a hygiene department. So we can allocate, as I said, a percentage of the fixed and variable expenses to compute the revenue cost ratio for that department. Many times today, there are dental practices that have 2 or 3 hygienists, and that hygiene department can be generating $600 to $800, in some cases $1 million a year, and the owner of that business doesn't even know the precise costs of that department. They can guess at it, but they don't know what it is. This gives them the actual revenues and costs. We can do the same thing for an associate that comes in. We can earmark and put that associate over there in a separate profitability controller report and look at what is that associate's revenues, what are the exact costs, so we know what that is. It helps with insurance management. You've got to determine who you're working for, either the patients or the insurance company, and make a definite financial arrangements with every patient no matter what. So as I talk about financial arrangements, when you know what your exact costs are, many of your patients are going to say, well, that sounds like a lot of money. And now when you understand percentage budgeting, you're going to be able to say to your patient, okay, let me tell you how I arrive at my fee. 20% of my fee goes to pay my staff, 6% goes for occupancy, 5% goes for equipment, on and on and on. And I get 25% of your fee, and I believe my staff should not work here for 20 years and not walk away with some retirement plan, so part of that is allocated in that too. So every patient over a fixed amount, okay, whatever that is for you, $100, whatever it is, should have a definite written financial arrangement. Definite written financial arrangement. Never start treatment on anyone without a definite arrangement, because if you do, what's going to happen is you're going to start piling up receivables. We believe cash is king. In my first practice in Dyersville, Walt Berry had on the wall, "In God we trust, while others pay cash," and by God they did, and it seemed to work. Why we've gotten away from this, I don't understand, but the further you get away from this, I can assure you, the higher your receivables are going to be. And obviously your payable system. Payable system is controlled by the percentage budget, see? If your expenses are controlled by a predetermined expense budget, then your payables person isn't going to be just sitting there trying to find the money to write checks for the expenses, because you have to control. The budget is 2 budgets. One is to control costs. So you have to know what you give a given amount of money to spend in each category, even every month, and the percentage budget gives you that. And of course, we have to have a production budget. But a production budget without a cash flow or a percentage budget to control cost doesn't make any sense, because you really need a healthy balance between income and outgo. In other words, you need two budgets. You need an expense and you need a production budget. And then the other piece is really important. I mentioned we masked this as an expense. The Solvency Freedom Account is comprised of weekly deposits of 10% of the actual collections to protect your practice and give you financial peace. When you have $100,000 in your solvency account, you feel a lot better than you do when you got zero. Okay? When you got $500,000 in there, you feel a lot better. And so solvency is a planned saving expense to protect your business and your emotions. Then the last piece of this is ROI. ROI is your return on investment. It's what you and I deserve for the risk of going in our business. Okay? That 10% also is a planned expense in your budget to help you create financial freedom. So when you look at this, you'll notice in this pie chart that this is total of 100%, but you'll notice in this, as we have expenses for everything else, we do have an expense, a savings, but masked as an expense for solvency, for ROI, which are both profit, and an additional 4%. So here, in an ideal situation, is 24% is for profit in a business. Now, obviously, you're going to have to be concerned about taxes. You're going to have to make a plan for that. So if we look at the whole system, we really take it step by step. And the heart of the system is percentage budget. You've got to nail that first, because that also tells you what your associate compensation should be. Associate compensation 25, 30%. As an endodontist, perhaps 35%. As a pediatric dentist, maybe 35%. But you start going above that and you're going to run out of money, because now if your overhead, this works if your overhead is 50%. But if your overhead is 60, 65%, as in a lot of cases, it means that the senior doctor isn't making any money. Wonder why associate agreements don't work out. Wonder why associates come into practices and they leave. It's because the owner doctor never nails the arrangements properly financially. It also deals with partnership compensation. It's absolutely huge, because if you've got 50% to go to overhead and each individual partner is getting paid 30%, now if you pay, your overhead is 50 and you pay your partners 50, good luck, because your associates that amount, they're never going to become partners. Why would they become partners? They're already overpaid. So there's no profit in this partnership. Okay? So you have to really look at this. So this percentage budget, when this is under control, it gives you the formula to create a partnership relationship. It also works to create a multi-specialist partnership arrangement. However, that works out, because the partners then, they make their money as technicians delivering the dentistry, but there's also a potential for profit in the business. If you take it all out, there's no potential for profit. It also works in a multi-office partnership arrangement, where you get one-page management for each office, but it's all based on the percentage budgeting system. So as you look at this, you think, okay, it looks complex, but it's really simple. You take one step at a time, do one thing at a time, understand where it all works and how it works, because one thing leads to another, and every one of these pieces has got to be in place, or you don't have a cash flow system. Now, your accounting doesn't give you any of this. In fact, your accounting statements don't give you squat, and that's why they don't work. And an accounting statement, you'll die broke if you run your business by it. You need accountants. I have a great relationship with my accountant. I think they're some of the best tax people in the world. I've used the same accounting firm since 1975, but they can only do two things. They're good for depreciation and they're good for taxes. So how your money flows is really critical to how you feel about your life, to the quality of dentistry you're able to do, to the relationships you have, with your family, your spouse, to the relationships you have with your partners. So all the money comes in and then it all starts going out, okay? But what we want is we want you to have a very comfortable way in which the money flows through your business. We want to get you out of the rat race. And how do you know you're in the rat race? You know in the rat race when you can't sleep at night, you're worried about the money, you're worried about this, you go into the office, you start to get burned out and tired, and you just don't like it anymore. And a lot of it doesn't have to do with money, but a lot of it does. And so what happens if you don't get control of money, you really are sitting in a disabling state regarding the finance. You don't feel like you're moving forward. And these are emotional states which dramatically impact how we feel. Is there a relationship to overhead to net? You bet there is. At 60% overhead versus 50% overhead, you gotta work 25% more to net the same. At 65 versus 50%, you gotta work 2 more days a week to net the same. At 70%, you start becoming an idiot, okay? Because now you got to work 2/3 more to net the same that you did down here. So now you're really chasing the expenses. I will tell you, a 70% overhead dentist doesn't have any chance at all to do really quality care because there's no time. So let me review this again. 3 fixed expenses, 32 make up for 32%. 4 variable expenses make up for 20%. So to make it simple, there are 5 easy numbers. How much is coming in? How much is going out? How much do you owe? How much are you owed? And how much cash do you have on hand? So one of the things you probably heard me say before, and I'm going to say it again, if profit isn't your economic goal and you don't have a cash flow system in place, all you're going to do is end up chasing your expenses. You'll drive up the production. You'll create a production-driven practice in which you can never deliver high-quality care. So let me show you this very quickly. This is a typical profit and loss statement. Okay? It shows year ending. One year the dentist had a revenue of $981,000. The next year, $1,150,000. Now, you would think that was good, but when the dentist talked to us, he said, I feel like I'm working harder and harder for less than less. Well, when you look even down at the bottom of his P&L statement, he's absolutely correct. 1 year, his net income on that amount was $303,000. The next year, it was $313,000. So he basically took in about $170,000 more for $10,000 increase in net profit. I think he could have stayed home 2 months and been just fine. So what we did, and what we'll do for any of you, we took everything on his P&L and we put it into a model for spending. We call this the profit potential profile when we do it initially. And what we found when we did that, we found that this dentist's actual cost was almost 72%. This means that he was losing, compared to 52%, he was losing $11,670 a month. He was actually spending $49,860 a month in expenses, and he was actually taking home $26,000 before tax. Not a bad income, but with $1,000 more of expenses, he could be taking home $11,000, almost $12,000 more. So I guess the question is it worth $1,000 a month to learn how to recapture $11,000 a month? So if we look at this, the question is not how much you're grossing, but how much you're losing. At $600,000, a dentist is losing $108,000 a year. At $700,000, $126,000, losing $126,000. At $800,000, that's $12,000 a month. At $900,000, it's $162,000, and at $1 million, it's $180,000. 10 years at $900,000, this dentist is losing $1,620,000 in real money. That is enough money in 10 years to fund a retirement plan and be able to retire with dignity and respect. 30 years, it's a $4,860,000 net profit loss. I think that's pretty amazing. I mean, I think that's pretty amazing. It's really interesting. As I was preparing this webinar, I got an email from Dr. Brad Brooks from Lubbock, Texas, who I believe is on this webinar, and I asked him for permission to share this with you. This is what he wrote. This was Monday this week. I really enjoyed your article in Dental Economics about coaching. Indeed, it's true. In your management programs, you personally are doing a lot of coaching, be it directly with your teaching or follow up through your team there. I consider it an honor to be an alum, and I've shared this with you in the past. I now have control over the business money of the practice, not to mention the low overhead that you teach. It's hard for me to imagine my overhead being at 70+% as it was before I came there and learned what we needed to do to work on back here in my practice. If you told me then that my overhead would be 47% within a few years, they don't get there overnight, and remain that way as it has and continues to do so, I would have politely told you you were insane. It works. It continues to work. Small, lean, efficient is the ticket. I would not go back to the way I used to practice for anything. That's what was insane. Dr. Brad Brooks. So I mentioned to you that I would give you an invitation when I complete this cash flow seminar. So I'm going to offer you an invitation to complete a profit potential profile. Your positive response indicates your desire to know where your money is going and begin a proactive, creative approach to money in your life and practice. So I would ask you, those of you that are interested in filling out a profit potential profile, please respond yes, and we will schedule a time to talk with you and eventually get a P&L from you, and we will do this complimentary, and you are not under any further obligation to go any further than that, and neither are we. It's an opportunity for us to share this with you, crunch your numbers for you, and have a conversation with you, and then you can decide what you want to do at that point. I appreciate you being here, and it's great to have you, and I sincerely hope that this has been of value to you, and I know if you go to the steps to put it in place that it will make a big difference. So I wish you all the blessings that life can bring you. Thank you for being here, and thanks for being involved. Leave it on the air so they can